And God said, "Let there be
The
light."
Lord says, "Let my people go."
I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
This is the Talkin Bible podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Talkin Bible podcast on Maundy Thursday. Maundy Thursday. I don't even know what that means, folks, but someone can Google it. Phil tells me it's the correct terminology for the Thursday before Good Friday. So welcome back, Phil Wearden.
Thank you, Rohan. Glad to be here.
Good to be back. We're rapidly heading towards Easter weekend as you're listening to these in real time at least, and we're kind of doing the stories out of order, but that's just the way they fitted with our reading plan. So we've done the crucifixion. No, actually, we haven't even done the crucifixion yet. That might be coming up next week.
Yeah.
We've done Jesus' Last Supper. We've done him predicting his denial. We've done his trial. We've done Gethsemane. We've done his resurrection. And now we're going back to deal with his burial. Yeah, so they're slightly out of order, but we've covered a far amount of that passion story over the course of the last couple of weeks. So, all right, let's kick into it with the story of Jesus' burial. Where would you like to go?
Well, actually, this is one question is like, did Jesus die on a Friday?
Oh, okay. You really want to answer that one? I don't know. I've heard arguments that would indicate that he died on a Thursday, and those arguments, it's a long time ago for me now, those arguments are pretty convincing, but I don't know for sure. So I know that throughout most of history it's been commemorated that he died on a Friday. And of course, the big question is, well, if he died on Friday and rose on Sunday morning, how was he in the
tomb for 3
tomb
days?
for 3 days and 3 nights? So that can't be true. You'd have to say, well, Friday's day 1, Saturday's day 2, and Thursday's day 3, Sunday's day 3. But that's not 3 nights. No. It might be 3 days, but it's only 2 nights.
Yeah.
So that leads to this argument of, did he die on a Thursday? What do you think, Phil?
In the big scheme of things, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Getting down to the nitty-gritties, but probably I don't think that he died on a Friday because the 3 days, 3 nights.
Yep.
I did hear one person where it was like, it was preparation for the Sabbath, like he died. Yep. And there's, you got the Sabbath on the Saturday, but there's also festival Sabbaths.
Correct. And I think that's the strong argument.
Yeah. And so
Thursday.
Just the way that the festival Sabbaths come around is there could be 2 Sabbaths day by day, day by like 2 days.
2 days in a row.
2 days in a row.
Correct.
So you could have the Friday could be a Sabbath and the Saturday could be a Sabbath.
So just to put that in perspective, folks, I mean, the other bit to add into that mix is Sabbath actually runs from, the regular weekly Sabbath runs from sundown on Friday night through to sundown on Saturday night.
Yeah.
So Sabbath begins Friday evening. So that's why if he's died on Friday evening, that's why they're saying, well, they haven't got time to do the burial. So that makes sense. But what Phil is saying, just to clarify it, is that in the Mosaic covenant, in the Jewish law, there is provision. In fact, it's recognised that at certain feasts, such as Passover, there were other holy days which were also recognised as extra Sabbaths. And it could fall in such a way that the particular day of preparation of Passover or whatever it might be, that would have made the sundown Thursday through to sundown Friday a Sabbath, as well as the traditional weekly Sabbath.
Yeah.
In which case it would fit that Jesus could be crucified on Thursday afternoon or Thursday morning, die Thursday afternoon, spend 3 nights in the tomb, and rise again on Sunday morning, and it would fit the 3 days and 3 nights narrative. Yeah. And that's what if you had to push me, I remember listening to the arguments years ago and going, they sound very convincing.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me, but like you said, in the grand scheme of things, it's probably not as important as when Jesus died as that Jesus died.
Yeah. It's Jesus died.
Yep. Jesus died and was buried. And rose again on the 3rd day.
Yeah.
Which is the Nicene Creed. That's the statement central to our faith. Yep.
So how it all happened and sort of thing, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't
affect my faith.
That it happened. That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm not going to sacrifice myself
correct
on a cross
yep.
on a Friday just to prove that.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. And we should add that nowhere in the New Testament in narratives does it say which day of the week he died. It just mentions the Sabbath. So it could be mentioning the special Sabbath. It's not out of the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like those special Sabbaths, like where it says on the day of Nisan, the 14th day of Nisan, they held a special fast or
Yes,
special
that's right.
Sabbath. So
Yep.
that's not a set Monday or Tuesdays.
No,
really.
those Sabbaths would cycle through the calendar on different days of the week.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
So that's sort of probably a lot of people ask that question, especially new believers.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's supposed to be 3 days, and how do you get? And
How do you
and
get 3 days?
Not just new believers, but any person who thinks about Easter and hears the story, they go question.
Yeah, it's a valid question, and I would not blame anyone for asking it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Jesus had to be buried quickly on that because that was their Jewish custom, was that they didn't allow people to be dead hanging on a cross or hanging on a tree
didn't want
overnight.
That. No, they didn't want that. It was part of their Jewish principles.
And
the Romans didn't have to comply with that. They could have done whatever they wanted, but they obviously were gracious enough and compassionate enough to honour that. And so what happened is they said, we don't want them to stay on the. It's against our law for them to stay on the cross or overnight. So they said, okay, we'll go and break the legs of those 3 men. Because breaking the legs would cause them to not be able to push themselves up again, so they would ultimately suffocate. Because many times people would stay on the cross for days. Yeah. So they broke the legs of the other 2. They came to Jesus, and it testifies that he was already dead because of the trauma and everything that he'd been through, and so they pierced his side. John's Gospel says. Then they took his body down, didn't they?
Yep.
And buried it in a borrowed tomb.
A borrowed tomb. Joseph of Arimathea.
Yep. Who was a member of the ruling elite.
He was.
But obviously a secret follower of Jesus as well.
Yeah.
Along with his friend Nico.
Yeah.
As Jeannie calls him. Nicodemus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was wrapped in a cloth quickly, thrown and laid into the tomb. So and rolled a stone in front. So it's I'm sure if you've grown up in the Christian circles, you know about rolling the stone.
Yes.
And you've sung the songs left, right, and
Stone has been rolled away and all those ones. Yep.
And it's with the burial of Jesus, it's like, oh, well, where were the disciples? They weren't there. It was the women who were there, who were weeping over Jesus.
Yep.
And following Jesus to sort of say, where is he? So lots of questions. Why did the disciples all ran away?
Yep.
So what were they experiencing? What grief were they feeling?
I'd say grief and disappointment and fear. I think it says that they were locked away for fear of the Jews, fear that they were going to get captured as well. Yeah. So there's fear there. There's disappointment. They still couldn't figure this out, that Jesus had died. Their hopes had been supposedly dashed. So they're feeling all of that. And it's a blight on them, I suppose, that they don't have the courage to do what the women do and follow and stay close. Maybe that's the maternal component coming through.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Well, there was a few women who did it.
Yes, there's a number of women that were there. Yeah.
I'm just seeing at least 2.
It depends on the gospel account as to who Mary, the mother of James, and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph the younger is most likely Jesus' mother, Mary.
Yeah.
And Mary Magdalene's there. So there's at least those couple, depending on the account of who's there. Yeah, preparing his body, or be watching where his body. In this case, they're not preparing his body. That happens on Resurrection Sunday, but they're watching where he's buried.
So, and part they sort of say what I did read where they were they saw where he was buried and they went back to prepare the spices and then stopped because Sabbath.
Had gone.
They were following the Jewish customs.
Yes, that's correct. And then stopped until Sunday morning. Yeah, and they would needed to have bought a lot of spice as well. So the shops probably were closing.
Yeah.
So they would have had to wait until Sunday morning when the shops reopened. Yeah. To be able to get what they needed. Yeah.
I just sort of thought one of the Gospels sort of says very early Sunday morning.
Yes.
So I don't know if they would have had time to.
Yes, I don't know. Yeah. It depends on what very early Sunday morning means.
Yeah.
Yeah. It might have been first thing after the shops open. I don't know. I have heard it mentioned that they would have needed a lot of spices and things, and they wouldn't necessarily have always had enough on hand to do a burial at short notice.
Well, after Jesus was resurrected, did they get their money back because they didn't use
did
it?
they get their money back? I think it's the last thing they're worried about. Can I get my money back now? I spent all this money on burial spices. Yes, so, but yeah, I don't know whether that's just hearsay or whatever, but it would make sense that would be part of the process of why they wouldn't have been able to go through with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jesus is buried, and it fulfills prophecy. Isn't there a prophecy that says he's buried in a rich man's? It's like a prophecy.
There is a prophecy about that.
Assigned a grave with the wicked, buried in a rich man's tomb, or something like that.
There is some prophecy about along those lines.
It might be Isaiah 53. Might be part of. Let me look it up. I've got a feeling it might be part of Isaiah 53, which is we've referred to earlier in the week in this podcast. It's the famous prophecy about the suffering servant. Isaiah 53. I'm sure it's in there somewhere. Let's have a look. Yes, verse 3. He was despised and rejected, a man of sorrows, acquainted with deepest grief. We turned our back on him. He looked away. He was despised, and we did not care. No, that wasn't it. He's pierced for our transgressions. No, maybe it's not. Maybe it was. Maybe I thought it was.
He was buried in verse 9. He'd done no wrong, and he had never deceived anyone, but he was buried like a criminal. He was put in a rich man's grave.
Yeah. There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was the Lord's good plan to crush him, cause him grief. Yet when his life is made an offering for sin, he'll have many descendants, enjoy a long life.
Yeah.
So
it's worth actually having Isaiah 53 and Psalm 22 open.
Yes.
As you read these crucifixion narratives and this burial narrative and everything, because those two passages especially, among many, but those two are probably some of the two most poignant, messianic, directly prophetic passages in all of the Old Testament, written hundreds and hundreds of years before. In one case, Psalm 22, 1,000 years before. Isaiah written, well, depending on when you say it was written, at least hundreds of years before.
Yeah.
Written before the crucifixion, and specifically, very poignantly, seem to be speaking about what Jesus endured on the cross. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially Psalm 22 when it's what was in say death wasn't by crucifixion when David wrote the psalm.
No, definitely wasn't. No. They divided lots and cast lots for divided my clothing among them, cast lots for clothing. Yes, those two psalms. It's worth just meditating on those as you head into Easter weekend. Yeah. It's probably worth doing. Yeah, yeah. So he was buried in this tomb, but it was only for the weekend. Yeah, as we said last time. It's just for the weekend. Yes.
That were the main points I had.
Let me add in just a couple of other thoughts and we'll close. It's probably linked more to the stuff we talked about in yesterday's episode around the evidence for the resurrection. But note here that one of the arguments, in fact, it's one of the arguments that is used even at the time, it's referenced in the Bible, is they came and stole the body away. Yeah. You know, another one says, they buried him in the wrong tomb. So there's all these crazy arguments. But note that the women saw this. They knew the tomb. Yeah. They watched it. It wasn't like it was conspiracy. They watched it. You don't smuggle a body out of a tomb without anybody noticing in a rich part of town. Yeah. So,
and there was soldiers were
guarding the tomb. So, and then they spread this rumor the soldiers fell asleep. Well, that's soldiers don't fall asleep on the duty anyway.
No, they would have been killed if that was the case.
They were cross-examined and killed for the purpose of this. And also too, if it was the wrong tomb, why didn't the Romans or the Jews just say, oh, look, you guys got the wrong tomb. Here's the right tomb. Yeah. Here's the body. So the fact that they didn't just show up a body indicates that there's something significant happened here. And so this is, they knew which tomb this was. And Joseph of Arimathea is obviously well known then, and he's been known throughout history. So that, he was known into the early church. When this is being written, they could verify with this man called Joseph that, hey, he was in my tomb and he rose again. Yeah.
And then he, what was one of the said Jesus appeared to 500 people.
Peter said, Paul says that.
And people were still alive to testify.
Go and check. Some of them are still alive. Go and have a chat with them. Yeah, that's right. That's Paul's testimony about Jesus' resurrection. Yeah, that he beat over 500 at once. Yeah. Some are dead, some are alive. Go and check with the ones who are still alive. Yeah. Anyway, all right, that's enough on the burial in Joseph's tomb. Oh, we should mention Nicodemus shows up there, interestingly enough, too.
Yeah.
It's probably just worth mentioning. John's Gospel mentions him in John 3 and then brings him back around this time. So just a little nugget for you to go out and in your own reflection time over the Easter weekend, read that. All right, then.
Okay.
Enough for today. We will talk to you on Good Friday tomorrow, everyone.
Yes.
See you then.
Yeah.